What's up, everybody? A little impromptu session today for our podcast and for people who are tuning in live via Facebook and YouTube. I'm going to introduce this man to my right in just a second. But before we do that, we want to let you know we're going to be on for how long?
30 minutes.
30 minutes or so.
Have some fun.
We're going to talk, we're going to share stories, and we're going to give you some really actionable advice on the topic of sales. Well, why are we talking about this? Because Elay Cohen, he's the co-founder and CEO of Saleshood. He's written a book. He's worked at Salesforce during the hypergrowth year, and he was the first ever recipient of Executive of the Year. That is a big honor. Big honor. Big deal here. Okay. And while at Salesforce, he helped the company grow from 300 million in revenue to 3 billion in revenue.
10x.
They added a zero to that. Amazing. And now you're on to this brand new thing. Tell me, what is Saleshood all about?
Oh, we're so excited. Saleshood, is something I've always wanted to build. I want to help salespeople be the best they can be. So I've created a SaaS, software as a service technology platform that takes video, mobile, and the way that salespeople can learn from each other, and it's super incredible. So we help companies improve knowledge, track effectiveness, and boost productivity. So simply put, salespeople close more deals when they use Sales. So we've got over 25,000 salespeople using it already, and we're just getting started, Chris. Super exciting.
Awesome. So everybody in my creative community wants to know, how do they get more business? How do they do sales and marketing? So I'm just thrilled that you're here, and we spontaneously decided to do this. So
here we are.
Here's the question I'm going to throw at you. What advice do you have for people who want to be better at sales?
Okay, that's a good question. Let me just take a moment and just qualify. I think it's important for folks to get a sense of my context and my background. Yes, Salesforce was a big part of my career. At the age of 5, I was selling furniture at my dad's furniture store. And, I grew up with sales in my blood, selling furniture. And then I went and sold first aid supplies. I had my own lawn cutting business, knocking on doors. It was super exciting. And worked at a bank selling, and then moved from Toronto to Silicon Valley, and had a great time in working at a startup. And then I worked at Oracle, and then boom, worked at Salesforce.com and trained thousands and thousands and thousands of sales professionals. And, there's something I've learned over the years, and this is, it's a secret, but the best of us sometimes forget. We think, let's get in, we have a customer, we got to tell them all the great things we do.
We want to pitch.
We want to pitch. It's all about the pitch. And, it's important at the right time to share with our customers, with our prospects, what it is, what value we can deliver to them. But here's a question. How do we deliver value to a customer when we don't know what they're doing? We don't know what problem they're solving. So to answer your question, sorry, that was a long answer, but the best, most successful, most creative, most consultative, the sales professionals that make the most money and that solve the biggest problems are the ones that ask the best questions. Curiosity. I have a dear friend. His name is Barry Ryan, and he's written created a whole curriculum around selling through curiosity, and I learned a lot from that. So the next time you find yourself selling through curiosity, being curious, asking questions, asking open-ended questions, layering questions, problem questions, quantification questions, and the questions need to be open-ended. They can't be closed-ended. So, the next time you're sitting with a customer and a prospect and they want to hear you pitch, resist the urge to pitch. Take a step back. And here's the best advice I can give you. Ask them, well, why are we here today? What problem are we trying to solve? Why did you reach out? What's going on in your business? It's a simple question. What's going on in your business? The amount of times we get calls at Saleshood, and I've been on a ton of calls over the years, and just start with the simple, obvious question. Why are we here, and what problem are we solving? So it's really important to be very, very mindful of the fact that we need to ask a bunch of questions, open-ended questions. We need to listen, talk less, because guess what? What problem we think we may solve by jumping to the pitch first is going to be not even close to the depth of the problem that you're going to solve. And, by doing this discovery, and it's called discovery, right? We're being curious, but the official sales term is called discovery. And it's when we discover the problem that we're trying to solve. And I can't tell you how many sales professionals we always need to train and retrain to remind them the importance of just asking simple questions. Super, super simple concept, but even the best of us forget sometimes. So, that's...
I have some questions.
Oh my God, questions. Go ahead. Sorry, I was long. And
so you're saying you got to ask some really great questions, so that also implies not all questions are created equally.
There you go.
Can you give us some examples of low-level questions and then some high-level questions?
So a high-level question like what problem are we solving? What's the current situation in your business? Where are you No, that was a bad question. Are you profitable? See that? That's a close-ended question. See, I'm even like you wanna and here's the thing. Let's just kind of take a step back.
Okay.
When you sit down with a customer, right? If you're coming to meet me or you're coming to meet Chris, and you have a general sense of what you got to do your research, but you got to write down some questions ahead of time. What do you want to learn from a session? You don't need 20 questions. You just need what are the top 2 or 3 questions. So focus on the high level. What's going on in the business? What problems are we solving? Is the company making money? Are they losing money? What are their goals? What are the goals of the executives that you're meeting with? Really important. Once you anchor yourself around a core problem you're trying to solve, then you want to start understanding, well, who cares about the problem? And why do they care about the problem? Just you can see the layers here and the layers here and the layers here. And is that a really big problem for you? That's a bad question, right? Any question that a customer can answer yes or no to without giving you color is a waste of a question.
Okay. That helps me out a lot.
Yeah. So that's my biggest advice. Just be very mindful of the importance of asking open-ended layering questions. Be curious.
All right. Somebody's calling me smug. I'm just smiling, Ben Chadwick. Let's do this, you guys. I'm going to prompt you guys that are tuning on Facebook and also on YouTube. Why don't you throw out some of what you think are some really good questions to ask your clients? What have you asked your client recently and had a really positive reaction to? All right. So Eli and I will try to monitor that as we're going through, and of course, Mark and Aaron are in the other room.
Oops, that's me just learning how this works.
Turn the volume down. It's okay. It's cool. It's all good. We're live. Okay. So you guys, we are standing up. That's one question that people are asking. We are totally standing up, you guys.
Yeah, we're standing up. So there's a question here. How do you qualify a prospect without being salesy?
Who asked that question? Do you know them?
Nisa Lacey.
Okay, Nisa, thanks for your question.
Nisa, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, but nice to meet you. And, how do you qualify a prospect without being too salesy? Listen, time is the most important thing and is the most important commodity you have. And it's okay to start asking customers questions about the problems that they're solving. And you should focus on urgency and time, meaning it's when do they want to solve the problem by, and who cares about solving the problem. So for example, let's just say a customer tells you, you're speaking to someone and they tell you the problem is kind of important, but if you start asking questions about the relative prioritization of that problem, and they tell you it's important, but it's not the top priority, right? Where does this problem that you've just uncovered fit in the overall prioritization of a company? If you sit down with Chris, and Chris tells you that he's got an issue with something, and then you take a step back and you really uncover and you really figure out what the problem is, and you got it documented, and then you kind of go, not in a salesy way, well, where does this fit in the context of all of the problems that you're solving? Give me some examples of some other problems, and he lists problem 2, problem 3, problem 4. You're not being salesy, you're being consultative. Then, where does your problem fit? Well, if it's not number 1 or number 2, you basically know where it's going to fit in terms of getting budgeted and getting funded. So I think relative prioritization is the ultimate way in driving, a qualification, because you don't want to spend time, building proposals, building proposals and spending time doing a whole bunch of work if it's not the number 1 problem with the person you're talking to. No one's got time for that in life. What other questions we got?
I got a good question here. So, Celio Ramos is asking, hey guys, how do I recognize that I'm pitching instead of being open?
Ooh, well, it's
pretty obvious, right?
Well, I think it's interesting when, so there's you want to learn as much about your customers, and you want to learn a lot, as much as you can, about their priorities. You want to learn about the person that you're speaking with, their priorities and their initiatives. Now, you reach a point where you are ready to do a presentation. And there's a way where you can still share your perspective, right? You can take everything that you've learned, you can customize your presentation and your pitch, and you can start explaining to your customer how you're going to solve that problem. But guess what? you can continue to ask questions. So for example, let's just say you've done your discovery, you've asked a bunch of questions, and you've written down the answer, you've taken great notes, and then you tell the customer that you're going to take some time to think about it, which is a really important pause and think, and don't feel like you always need to pitch right there on the spot. Maybe take a day or two, tell them you're going to summarize.
Oh, I like that.
Summarize with some, you're going to collect some thoughts, you're going to look at some best practices, process the info.
Yep.
Make sure, hey, here's a little rule. If you meet a customer and you collect some information from them, this is like sales 101, but it's the most professional thing you can do. You send a meeting recap that day. You don't go to bed at night until you send a meeting recap, because that you're training them to accept. You're training them to know that you're going to be reliable and dependable, and that you're listening to them. And then the best thing is,
those are good tips.
Yeah, when they say thank you and when they reply, and then at least you're engaging in a conversation, and you're automatically qualifying your customers by sending them a summary or recap, and maybe asking them another question. How does this compare to how you thought the meeting went? That's an interesting way to close a meeting recap summary, but I lost my train of thought.
No, I think you did a great job, but let me just recap quickly here.
Yeah,
so that
thank you.
That'll give you a minute to kind of process what you want to say next.
Yeah.
All right. What Eli is saying is that even in this consultative space, and you're asking these really wonderful open-ended questions, the ones that encourage dialogue and discovery, at some point in the meeting, perhaps your prospective client says to you, so pitch me, what do you got? Why are you here?
What do you got?
And I love what you said, just like, you buy yourself some time. I don't think you want to jump to any kind of conclusions, recommendations. You can just say, I need to process this. Let me think on it. Like, let me sleep on this for tonight, and then I'll get back to you. And then you're saying immediately afterwards, send the follow-up email outlining what we talked about. This validates the person. It says, I was listening the whole time, and it just gives you time to put a very thoughtful response to that very open-ended question too. And I love that.
And then you come back to the meeting. You come back and you meet the team, you meet the customer that you were talking with, and now it's quote unquote pitch time. But it's not really pitch time, because guess what? You're coming to the meeting, you're prepared. You have an agenda. You've got a few slides maybe, or you've got a whiteboard presentation. You've got something that you're going to share with the customer, and you pull up your agenda, and you know what? You don't need to pitch. How does this compare with what you want to accomplish today? Guess what? You're back in discovery. And maybe you put up a value-based statement around the problem that you're going to solve, and you've got an image maybe. And rather than pitching, so here's an image that summarizes what we discussed. Look at the boxes, look at the words. Let me just stop for a second. Before I go any further, how does this compare to how do you think this is going to solve your problem? What do you think? And something else I do, if you meet a customer and you meet some folks and you do some real discovery and you ask a whole bunch of questions, which is really important. You document the findings, and then you send them the follow-up note. And then you do plan a meeting where you're going to go back and you're going to do the quote-unquote pitch. You've got a champion. You've got someone that you're going to, be pitching this to, and maybe they're going to bring a few other folks. Don't forget, you can use that person and get their feedback. Hey, before the big meeting, can I walk you through the presentation? I want to get your feedback. And you just flip them through the presentation, and then it's an insurance policy for success, what it is.
I like
Insurance
that.
policy for success.
Elay Cohen, dropping some knowledge and just wrapping up a little button and bow tie.
And we got a bell here?
Yeah. Wait, only the host can hit the bell.
Sorry.
That's an FCC violation right there. All right. Okay, only I can touch the bell.
That's what we're doing here.
You can't ring your own bell, sir.
Listen, we're asking questions.
All right.
And we're doing it because we want to ring the bell. That's an expression, right?
Okay,
in the sales world.
Right.
Ring the bell.
That's a win.
That's a win. Ring the bell.
So what you were just saying is that before you go back on the big pitch presentation meeting, you can check for alignment and make sure you got everything right just by going back to the person that you were taking the initial meeting with and saying, take a look at this. Did I capture everything? Did I miss anything? Was there something in my blind spot that I didn't pick up on? Or maybe you've had other thoughts that weren't discussed that need to be incorporated into this. So in this way, you're onboarding them even more. You're really showing, I care about you. I'm listening, and I really value your thoughts and your opinion. Okay, let's get through all that. Let's say he's like, it's pitch perfect, or she says it's pitch perfect. Go in and do the meeting. What are you going to do now, Eli?
Well, you're in the meeting. And
now
again,
remember, these are creative people.
Yes.
These are not A-types or not extroverts. They're timid. They're self-conscious. Sometimes they're even insecure. Try and keep that in mind. This is not you, obviously.
Come on, listen, sales professionals, they're not as extroverted as people think. The best sales professionals on the planet are creative, thoughtful communicators, and they're problem solvers. and they're creative because they're listening with intent and purpose, and they're solving problems, and they're really, really effective communicators because they can take what they're hearing and then share it back and share in the match their solution to the customer's business problems, and just being really consultative about it. So you come back, you come back to the team, you're in the meeting, and you are again being super. Every moment is discovery. You're always learning. You're always checking in. You're looking for cues. You're looking around the room. You've got your agenda, and whether it's a slide or whether you've written the agenda on a whiteboard, or you have a printout of your agenda, and then you're looking around the room. And this is where you have an opportunity to have everybody introduce themselves. And what are they hoping to accomplish today? Listen, the worst thing you can do is walk into a meeting, you think you're pitching, you got 3 new people in the room, and they think something else is going to happen in the meeting. And that's bad. What you want to do is you want to just confirm, reconfirm, and then go through your agenda, item by item by item. And, make sure you leave room to breathe. I'm going to breathe right now.
I like what you keep saying is you're always checking for alignment along the process. So before I present anything, before I pitch you any ideas, I've spent the time to learn about you, about your business. I'm checking in with you before the meeting, and in the meeting, even though everything's been confirmed, you see a few new faces, and you don't make any assumptions about what it is that they're there for. So you ask once again. So you're asking and you're gaining alignment each time.
Yeah, I was with a top sales professional from DocuSign. DocuSign's the contract management, the contract signing, digital signing company. So one of the top sales reps there, and he was telling me some of his secrets. And he literally said he walks into a meeting, he's got a bunch of new faces, he stands up, grabs the whiteboard marker, and writes every single person's name on the whiteboard, and then writes on the whiteboard exactly what their goal is for the meeting. Want this to happen. That way, guess what? Fast forward 45 minutes. You always leave room for questions at the end. Fast forward to the end of the meeting. Just want to kind of wrap up the meeting, and let's get back to the goals of the meeting. Bob, what did you think? How do we do relative to your goal? Mary, how do we do? It's a very professional, elegant way to kind of front end and bookend a meeting, and it really demonstrates that you're listening. You do alignment. I love the word alignment. Empathy, huge.
Yes.
And it's the way to get it done. It's the way to do it. And you're not coming across pitchy. You're just coming across as an effective communicator who's here to solve a problem. And that's full circle to your original question. The best salespeople are the ones that solve really big problems. And that's why you're being thoughtfully curious about discovery about your customers' problems, because you don't want to solve a small problem. You want to solve their biggest problem. Because what happens when you solve their biggest problem?
You're worth a lot.
The value goes up.
Yeah.
You make more, and yes, listen, we like being creative and we like creating things, but we're also doing this for money.
All right. So my audience can hear this.
Yes.
What are some big problems to solve? What do they sound like in your world?
Well, if a company is losing money, if a company isn't hitting their revenue goals, if a company is losing market share, if a company is I think those are really big ones. Let's just kind of like losing money is bad. Having kind of market share is losing. I don't know. Does that make sense?
It makes sense to me.
Yeah. I'm just kind of a little bit of a brain there.
No, because designers come into the room and think, I want to change your website, or I want to update the logo or change the typeface. Is that a big problem or is that a small problem?
Well, that's a tactical solution, right? Let's take a step back. Somebody calls, let's just pretend hypothetically I called you up and I said, hey, looking for, I want to improve the way we talk about our company, right? Let's just say, right? So if hypothetically speaking, if you want to up level, if you want to up level how you're communicating your value to the organization, to the world, then I guess I lost my train of thought there again. What you want to do is you want to kind of take a step back and start asking questions about why, right?
Okay.
So company says, I want a new website. Goodness, great, awesome. Well, we could go design a website pretty quickly for you, but let's take a step back. What problem are you solving? What's wrong with your website today? What would you like to see improved? What is the ideal of what your website should look like? What is the financial, what's the financial outcome you expect to see happen when you improve your website? And then you start talking about timeline, and then you start talking about, how important is updating your website to your overall, in the context of your other business initiatives, right? Just knowing all this information the great thing is at the end, what always happens at the end is if you've done a great job asking questions and you understand what the top business problems are, you understand, you really understand, the impact it's going to have on the customer's business. The end of the sales process, when you're negotiating the T's and C's, and the person that you're friends with says that you've been working with, and hey, by the way, we need a better deal. We can't afford to pay the full amount. I need about 30% off, and well, you can sit there and drop the price, or you can go back to your notes and say, well, wait, let's take a step back. You told us that your number one problem was growing market share. You told us your number one problem was you were losing revenue. And we concluded that by up-leveling and improving your overall presence, your digital image, and your digital brand through your website and your social channels, we've learned that's going to accomplish your goals, and you're going to go to market faster, and that's going to have a multi-million-dollar impact. So what's changed?
Boom, I like that. I like how you and I are talking the same language, and if you guys are wondering it, those of you guys that are longtime fans and have been listening to things I've been saying about sales negotiation, the idea of embrace and pivot, you're like, doesn't this sound familiar? It sounds very familiar because I learned it from this man. Now, Eli's been very generous. He's turned me on to his whole platform, his training, and all these words about compelling events, asking open-ended questions, high-value, low-value questions. All these things I learned directly from Eli. All right, so this is now getting it from the source here, and this is I'm thrilled to have you. Now we got some questions. Don't read them. Don't read them.
Yeah,
I don't want to get you distracted by the questions. I'll do the questions.
Okay.
And first of all, somebody's like saying, "You look good."
Oh, okay.
You're like, did you train to be charismatic, speak better, and be cool like you are in a deliberate way? And in parentheses, you're dressed sharp, by the way. Pretty nice. Now, since you brought up the whole aesthetic and the look at this golden tan. I think the person I was thinking of is George Hamilton.
George, oh my God.
He's known for his golden tan.
I got the gray now.
Next to you, I look like the bald vampire, but that's cool.
No.
I'm like, that's
dude,
okay. It's
man,
cool.
I love you,
It's all good. So
George Hamilton? I don't know.
I don't know. Just throwing it out there. Okay. Did you train
Thank you for that nice compliment, by the way.
Did you train to be charismatic? How did you learn to speak like this, to be cool?
Wow. I working at Salesforce, put me on stage in front of thousands of people multiple times a year. And that was just trained by doing, right? That's my philosophy at Salesforce: learn by doing, train by doing. And so that was an amazing training ground to just, imagine standing up in front of thousands of people and getting people motivated and inspired about wanting to be the best they can be. And I've just always been, a very, that's a great question, going back to kind of how I talked about my background, right? Knocking on doors and being very comfortable, sharing a story and storytelling has really impressed upon me the importance of just being able to speak and speak.
What happens to our feed, guys?
And speak and I don't know, just speak from the heart. Like, this isn't scripted, right? We're just from the heart coming up with ideas that we know work and we want to share. And I think, for me, my motto is I'm all about giving, and I'm all about connecting, and I've learned from the best. I've had great mentors. The CEO of Salesforce, Marc Benioff, was amazing to kind of grow up professionally at Salesforce.com, watching him perform. Just insane to just watch how he would present, and his idols are folks like Steve Jobs. So it's around us, right? So being in Silicon Valley through osmosis, I've been fortunate to be able to kind of reach a point where I can tell a story and hopefully elicit some positive energy like you're giving us right now. So thank you.
Well, I'd like to say this on behalf of Eli. I've known you for a few years now. There's something about you, and I know this. It's like you have genuine affection and concern for other people. We started working with you several years ago, but I feel like you're always looking out for us. You're recommending us. You know what's going on in my life, and I feel embarrassed because earlier today I'm like, oh, how many kids do you have? It's like I still can't keep track of these things, but you genuinely care. You genuinely care, right? And the other thing is, you got to look the part. Look at him. He's wearing a Paul Smith jacket here. He's sharp, and he knows about these details. So you can't go in the door looking sloppy. You got to be put together. And the hair is groomed perfectly, even though you can't really see it in his background. He has hair. Okay.
Yeah.
I do not. He does. Okay.
It shows on there.
Okay.
By the way, I live in San Francisco, and this past weekend it was beautifully warm, and I was able to have some time in a pool on Sunday. I'm not usually this tan. Just it's pretty tanned.
Okay. Here's a really good question.
Embarrassingly tanned.
Here's a really good question.
Okay.
And before we leave, I have to ask you about the bookend concept. You guys need to stick around for that. Okay. Before we leave, we're going to talk about this bookend concept now. Sophia Hamed is asking,
Hi, Sophia.
how would you reapproach a potential client who is interested in your work but may not be ready to jump into the work right away? That's a good question.
It's a great question, right? So we talked about compelling events. We talked about you talked about it
What's
briefly.
a compelling event?
So when we engage with customers, they've got a problem they want to solve, and that problem that they want to solve is tied to an event, and that event is ultimately how you know if they're ready or not. And customers have problems, but sometimes it's just not ready. It's not ready to come out of the oven. It's got to cook a little longer, and that's okay, right? I think it's important from a consultative perspective to recognize that, hey, we have mutual interest here. When you meet a customer, there's a problem, and you've professionally uncovered their problem, you've documented it, and you've explained to them how you can solve that problem, and then you're qualifying whether the time is right now, and it's okay to take a step back and say, the timing might not be right, and that's okay. Let's set a time in the future. I'll check back with you in 30 days and see what's changed in your business. Maybe budget isn't there. Maybe there's too much going on. But that's a beautiful thing, and you just log it for future, and you follow up, and that's a very warm, qualified lead. And don't be pushy. I think that's really, if it's not ready, it's not ready.
Right.
It's the oven is a great metaphor. It's if it needs to cook longer, it needs to cook longer. As long as you're solving a problem and you're aligned with your champion, and hey, you know what? Like, also sometimes maybe they'll go with someone else. Let's talk about that for a second.
Okay.
So I like the word reap. I thought you were going to ask, what happens if you lose? If you lose a deal, what happens if you lose a pitch? If you lose a project, and it's okay. You know your worth. You know the value, you know how good you are, and you know that what you can contribute to your customers. And sometimes at this exact moment in time, the stars weren't aligned. A loss, it's not a loss forever. And I love learning from losses. So, you lose a deal, it's okay. You reflect, you think about why you lost, and then it's an open invitation to check back with that person and ask them how it's going. How did the project work out for them? And they'll appreciate that professionalism. And then also,
you're not bitter about it.
You're not bitter.
You're just trying to learn.
Yeah, and if someone says it's not, if someone says to you now is not the right time, or they've gone with another provider, then don't be afraid to ask the question. Well, what could I have done better? Right? Again, open-ended questions. What could I have done better? How could I have earned your business? And you know what? You'll learn something. But then you're being human about it, and you're establishing rapport. You're building a relationship, which is just the human way of selling. But we tend to forget that. Like, oh, I lost a deal. Don't be that way.
That's great. Now, Eli's got to jump on a plane pretty soon here. I want to crush through as many of these questions as we can. So let's go lightning round.
Boom, boom, boom.
15-second answers, okay? I'm going to ask you the question here because I'm seeing some really good questions, and I don't want to waste the opportunity. How do you ask a lot of questions? This is Alan asking. How do you ask a lot of questions without looking like someone who doesn't know his job?
Right.
Often the client's like, after the question's like, you're the expert, you tell me.
Yeah, so
15 seconds on the clock.
Boom.
Go.
There's something called discovery fatigue. And there's a point where you've asked too many questions, and you need to summarize, recap, and so a couple questions, 3-4 questions, and then pause, and then kind of relay back what you heard and tell them how does this compare to the problem that they want to solve. So turn it into a conversation, and don't make it be like don't do discovery fatigue, and you're not drilling them with questions. And the questions need to be purposeful. Sorry, that was 15 seconds.
Beautiful. I love that. Here's your next question. 15 seconds on the clock. And this is coming from Kent William. How do you handle a client who is indecisive as to what they want and doesn't focus?
Wow.
Boom. Go.
Boom. So the person that you're speaking with is indecisive. You should ask yourself, why are they indecisive? And sometimes when they're indecisive, maybe they're the person that doesn't really have the power to make a decision. And you know what? All you can do is lay out some options and then take a step back. And again, if it's not ready, so either they're not the right person and they're stalling, and then you can ask them a question like, well, who else in your organization would be able to kind of enlighten us around this decision that we're making, or what are the other, what are some other, who are some other stakeholders that would be interested in talking with us? So you could potentially expand the scope by bringing in more people into the conversation. And you ultimately want to figure out if this is the right person, because they stall for a variety of reasons. So get curious around why are they stalling. Get really curious about it. Notice it's all about curiosity, right?
I like that. Now, here's a concept that you threw down. I was like, this is great. The people need to hear this. And we were talking about it. You said something to the effect, when you're doing sales, you can control how it begins and maybe close it. You're going to bookend the conversation, but you need to be flexible about what happens in the middle. That really resonated with me, because as I try to teach others and my team on how to sell, on how to close a job, I come in pretty open and empty. We want to control energy, but I don't want to control what is being said at every point in time.
Yeah.
Can you expand on that? Because I think you have a whole philosophy behind that.
A whole philosophy. 15 seconds?
No, this one you can. This is a
Okay.
deep one.
So, let's just kind of break down the meeting for a moment. And you've got, the meeting looks like this. You've got an agenda which will outline what you're going to accomplish in the meeting, and you've got the back end of the meeting which is going to outline what happened in the meeting, and did we meet the goals, right? So there's what do we want to accomplish on the front, and then what did we accomplish on the back, and then the bookends. Let me just kind of take it a step back as well. Before you walk into a meeting, that agenda, by the way, you're sending it to the person that you're meeting with ahead of time, just to confirm. Like, notice how many times I'm communicating and recommunicating with customers and prospects, and then as well on the back end, what transpired in the meeting and what you learned. What you're going to do is you're going to send a follow-up summary note. Remember, the same day of. But what happens in that meeting? You know what? The best thing that can happen to you is the meeting goes in a completely different direction. Customer shares with you so much more about their business, and you get deeper. You build you build a deeper relationship, and you're ultimately learning more about their business, and you're solving bigger problems. So I don't know if that's kind of how I thought about it. What were you thinking?
Well, I was just thinking, a lot of people think they just have a series of questions, and this, I can see it almost happen.
Yeah.
That they're not listening to the conversation. They're like, okay, question number 4, question number 5, and they just go through that as if the client reveals something that is something that was unexpected, you should chase that thing down.
Yeah.
Versus go on to questions 5, 6, because you're like a robot there.
You know what? If you practice your questions, right? You write down your questions. You look in the mirror before, and you kind of just recite some of your questions. But you need to accept the fact that after you ask your first question, that the rest of your questions are gone, and that you're going to go down a completely different path. You're going to go deep, and you're going to get really curious about that piece of information that they just share with you, because that's the most important thing, right? You're there to solve their problem. You learn something about that they share with you, and don't just accept the piece of information that they share, right? If they tell you that growing their business, you're there for a website overhaul, and turns out you've asked, so why are we here? Oh, we're here for a website overhaul. What problem are we solving? And well, we're seeing a kind of a decline in e-commerce sales. Great. And well, why do you think that's happening? And then they start giving you some color. Well, when you get to that, why is this happening? Then you want to go real deep. Well, give me some examples. Who's this important to in your organization? And when do you need to solve this problem by? And how would you quantify the why? And so you can see how many questions you can ask that are layered on top of each other, and then stop, breathe, and what have I missed, right? Like, and that's a conversation. And then now let me recap. So what you told me was problem A, and this is a situation that's currently happening, and you just kind of reconfirm what you heard using your customer's words, and then recapping it appropriately. So I don't know. That's how I engage with customers in a very thoughtful, discovery way, and ultimately comes across consultative and not pitchy or salesy.
Super. I think I got 1 or 2 more questions,
Okay.
and I'm gonna let you go. Okay, because
Sounds
you got
good.
a plane to catch and people to see and kids to hug.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, so here's the question. You've seen probably hundreds of pitches from all kinds of people, right?
More than hundreds.
Hundreds, thousands?
Yeah, thousands.
You've seen thousands of pitches.
I love them.
Tell me some of the ways that people screw up a pitch or a new business meeting.
Yeah.
Give me your top 3 horror stories.
Well, I think I remember once sitting in a room, and the sales rep walked in and plugged in the computer and started talking, and I remember looking at my watch thinking, wow, it's been 13 minutes and this salesperson has talked straight through for 13 minutes and hasn't asked a simple question. So that's just terrible. Like that's blasphemy. Like that should be, so, not opening up a meeting with the agenda, not confirming the agenda and then asking people what they hope to accomplish, because I can assure you, you get into minute 3, minute 4, everybody in that room is checked out. They're already looking at their phones and they're done. And you're never going to get called back in. So make sure that it's a conversation and not a pitch, even if it's called a pitch. I think that's really, really important. I think asking the wrong questions is bad, right? And so, and you don't need to ask all the questions. Don't think this is your last time, right? Get some key information and then kind of know what you know, and then you always reserve the right to send an email afterwards and say, hey, listen, a few questions I want to just clarify. Can we jump on a quick call? Again, that's another excuse to kind of speak and establish rapport, and it also shows that you're being thoughtful and that you really care about your customers' kind of business issues. So I think just not reading the room is another one. And reading the room is, the moment people start looking down, you go, hey, let's just kind of stop for a second and so control the room, but make sure that you are reading the room, and the vibe needs to be a collaborative conversation. So folks, when you get into a sales call, when you're talking too much and you're not asking enough questions and the room is checked out, you just got to do a hard stop and you got to reset. And the best way to reset is get back to the goals of the meeting and pull everybody back in.
Can you're very smooth. Obviously, you've done this.
It's the first time I've done live.
The first time you've done live, but
this is the first time.
This is not your first rodeo when it comes to controlling the energy in a room. You've spoken publicly. You've ran conferences. You do all these kinds of things. So this is a very strange concept for our community. They're in there like, what do you mean, like reset the room? Because a lot of times they're on that track, and they can't get off that track.
Yeah.
They're like, I've prepared all these things, and I've watched it. I've watched it happen. They can't alter the path at this point. And even though the room's totally checked out, any more tips that you can give us?
Whose meeting is it? It's your customer's meeting. It's your customer's business problem. It's their agenda. And, forgetting that, it's not your agenda. Yes, you have a prescribed agenda, but, resetting the room, make sure that, the person that has sponsored you, brought you into the company and has let you into their, into their office, and who's sharing with you their deepest, darkest secrets. It's important to just pause. When I say reset, I mean just stop that thing from going in the wrong direction. Avoid the train wreck, and it's okay to just say, hey, this is going in the wrong direction, or how's the meeting working for you? Or how does this meeting, how do you feel right now compared to what you want to accomplish? Or how are we doing? That's what I mean by reset. And that's just, it's okay to do that, and it's advised.
I'm glad you're saying that, because it's better for you to salvage half the meeting than for you to have a perfect meeting that nobody wants to see you ever again, and you're not going to close the business anyways.
Yeah.
I think a lot of creative people think the meeting is about them, that they were called into the meeting, and through force of personality and charisma that people are going to be hypnotized by their work. But really, if you change your mindset and move the focus away from you, and I love what you said, which was, whose meeting is this anyways? It's the customer, the client's meeting. It's their problem to solve. It's not about you showing off your wares. It doesn't matter if you put in 30 weeks worth of work on your deck. If it doesn't resonate with them, it doesn't solve their problem. What's the point anyways?
Yeah.
Now, let me do a quick check-in here. How are we doing on time? Do you have a watch?
I have a watch. It's a couple minutes to 5, I think.
Yeah.
I think we're.
Can I ask one more question?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Let's keep going. I'm liking this. How long has it been going on for? How long have we been doing this for?
38 minutes. Wow. It went like that. Okay. There was a good question in here I'm going to pull a question out from Facebook. Okay. Here it goes. Anessa Lacey says, Steve Jobs said people don't know what they want. What say you, Elay Cohen? That's a loaded question, so you can choose to do anything
I
you want
think,
with that.
I'm as an executive, I'm a CEO of a startup, and, I can speak personally and say, there are things that are important to me. And I've got initiatives and priorities that are top of mind for me. And, when people reach out to me and when they're trying to, help me, they're either helping me, helping me try to solve one of my top initiatives, or I just don't have room for it. I think, when we talk about that quote with Steve Jobs, I think, when we're building, kind of future products, right? The world didn't know that they needed an iPhone.
Right.
But, like as a kid, I used to have this Walkman. And I was like, I don't understand. I can only have X number of songs on this thing. And I always, anyway, but we kind of knew something was going to change. But he knew. He had a vision for something. When I founded SalesHood, you think people wanted a video-based social learning platform so they could learn from each other and share best practices? That's what I do. No, but we are showing people a path to their success. So we're aligning with what they want to do. And Anissa, it's a great question. And but I think, we're not all Steve Jobs. And we're all, individual mortals who are, ultimately trying to solve problems for our customers. And, we can think that way. We can be creative and we can aspire to be Apple-like in our vision and our design and our creative. And that's great. But let's not forget the basics here. When we sit down with a customer, they have a problem. They go to bed at night thinking about a certain set of things. And if we can't align with those things, we're going to miss an opportunity to help them and ultimately be successful together with them.
I like that. If you can solve a problem that's keeping the client up at night, you've solved a big problem. That's a high value problem. That's valuable. You guys start thinking about what you're doing to solve those high level problems. And I just didn't get a chance to speak about this because I was trying to read the questions here.
Yeah.
When you said a client's coming at you, if you're a designer and they're like, we need a website, you're like, well, why? Why do you need this? What kind of each time you ask one of those why questions, you're elevating your value. You're going to the top. Instead of saying, okay, what fonts do you want to use? What color palette should we use? And then get to work. That's not how you establish value. You need to surface a deeper problem. Then you're going to solve. Then you're going to be much more valuable. So
one point though, sometimes customers will say, I just need a website, and just do what I say. And you know what? It's important that when you are asking your questions, that you're explaining the context. And what I mean by that is, you are asking questions because you want to serve them better. And if you don't really understand the problem they're solving, the solution that you're going to give them might not really meet their needs. And so if someone pushes back and says, hey, stop asking me all these questions, kid, just, kind of pause, take a deep breath, respect authority, respect that they're the customer, and say, the reason why I'm asking the questions is I can, it's going to help me better. It's going to help me provide you with a better solution. And, so allow me to ask you a few more questions so that way we can ultimately build a better solution. And I think that's an important, I assume creative, sometimes that happens, right? Like, stop asking me all these questions.
It's going to happen, but I don't think creators are even asking the right kinds of questions to begin with.
Yeah.
So this is like, you're talking like black belt jiu-jitsu, and they're on the white or whatever belt they're at.
Yeah.
So these are much deeper conversations, but hopefully you guys, if this kind of conversation is turning you on, you got to dive in deeper. So let's talk about some resources. Are there some books or websites you can send them to? What's been helpful to you in learning about sales and how to sell?
Well, I had the good fortune of working with, some of the best sales reps on the planet. And that was at Salesforce. And my dad taught me how to sell at a very young age. And, there are a ton of great books. And I think, I wrote one.
What's it called?
The book's called SalesHood, and it's a really good, kind of prescriptive book around, how to sell and how to sell SaaS, how to sell technology. We also have a website, and folks, if you go to saleshood.com and you register,
don't say it. Are they gonna get the book?
No, they could go to Amazon and buy the book.
Okay.
What we're gonna do is this. We're going to set up a sales site for them with some of the videos that we talked about.
Okay.
And folks can get in there and you can start, kind of learning more about these topics like compelling events, just how to ask questions discovery, and like the site that we gave you guys. So we'll make that available. There'll be a future version. The future is boom, will be, and that way, if anyone is interested, you can just go and do that, and we'd be more than happy to share the knowledge with you. And there are a lot of good sales books out there. I'm trying to think of like the one sales book.
Okay, not one, just rattle off a few so they can go on Amazon and check it out.
Yeah, listen, Zig Ziglar's got some good books. There's Jeffrey Dormer has some books, the Red Book. So those are a couple good ones. I'm having like a brain.
Okay, I'll buy you some time.
Thank you.
Okay, while Eli's thinking about some resources for you guys, this is a question. I just want to see how you're gonna answer this one. This is I see this question all the time. Moral: Mendieta from Facebook is asking, how can I argue to the client when he's asking you for a solid number for goals when he can't decide the investment on the budget?
Well, you're using the word argue?
He used it. How
So-
can I argue with the client when he
Yeah.
asks for a solid number when he can't decide the investment of the budget? Boom, go.
How do I don't get the question.
Well, okay, let me see if I
You
can
know,
understand
tell me more about the question. So how do I argue with the customer? So basically, customer says, I have.
Like, I want a budget. How much is it going to cost me to get something done?
Well, you know, I think there's a way to handle budget, right? So you need to do the discovery, you need to ask questions, you need to really scope out what problem you're solving, and you need to have a scope. But you can talk in broad strokes, right? That's an interesting way to qualify, right? You can say, listen, we've done projects. Projects, you know, we can do small projects are in the range of this, large projects are in the range of that. I think that's a very effective way to not commit yourself to a number and just kind of qualify them. Are you in the zone? And that's how you can use a range of pricing to just determine if you're in the zone or not with it happens to us all the time. People, hey, how much is Sales Head? Well, there's the subscription for the software, and then there's services that you might need to be successful. Well, how much services? Well, depends on what you need. Well, what are the ranges? So just think about it that way. I think talk in ranges and in broad strokes, and you know, and again, you need to do the discovery. You need to really understand the scope. You need to understand the timing. You need to understand, you know, how much content, how much design, how much reworking of the sites, and all the stuff that you're working on. So you need the detail.
Okay, I like that. So people automatically in the creative space, I think when they hear a question, they feel forced to answer that question as if there was a lie detector test on them.
Yeah.
And if it's like, go ahead and pitch, well, I'm going to pitch you right now. So you've given us some tools and some things to help you, which was pause, slow down, really have a thoughtful solution. So stop. And so if a client's asking you about the budget, like, tell me the budget, the thing that you can come back to them is, well, based on our history and our experience, these things cost between this price and this price. Does this fit within what you're prepared to spend?
Yeah.
And then you really need to have clear scope, because otherwise you're just throwing out a random number, right?
Yeah. No,
Okay.
And you know, listen, when we talked, right, I think we were talking about a project that we were going to do together.
Yes.
And you know, we had an initial call. So there was a call that we discussed the scope of it, and it was high level. And then I got a follow-up email confirming the goals. And then this is the zone. You know, and you gave me a ballpark. You're just like, hey, this is what you want to do is going to cost somewhere between A and B.
Yep.
And I replied and said, in the zone, let's keep going.
Yes.
And
we're going.
And we're going. The Challenger Sale, I think, is a good book. I just thought about that one.
What is it called again?
The Challenger Sale. And so basically it's a really thoughtful book, and it's about helping you kind of take a step back and think about, from an insights perspective, what problem you're solving for your customers. And so there's some really good questioning in there where you can, you know, now I just want to be careful. It's a very popular book. People really appreciate it, but you need to be respectful after you read it. And it's not, you want to challenge in an insightful way. So for example, when you're building websites and you know what good is, right? You know what a good site looks like, right? And you know what a best practice looks like. You can ask questions about what a customer wants to do with their site. You can ask questions about what they're doing, but you can challenge their thinking. But don't challenge their assumptions. Just challenge their thinking and be thoughtful about it. Be courteous. Remember, they're the customer, and be polite.
Right.
But the Challenger Sale is a good one, and I would, you know, for some of you that really want to just kind of explore some really modern ways of selling and kind of really solving business problems, that's a good one.
Okay. Last question before we let you go.
Yeah.
If I was a smarter person, what question should I be asking you right now? And then you answer your own question.
If you were a smarter...
If I was a smarter person, what question should I be asking you right now?
About,
what question didn't I ask you?
About the work that we were doing?
Anything. No, anything.
Oh.
You know, like you're interviewing yourself.
Oh,
Sometimes I sit in that situation. I'm like, I wish you asked me this because I would have told you a really great story. Anything.
You know,
there's a little something on your
there's
food.
something right there.
Yeah, I got it.
I think, you know, what's the future of sales going to be? You know, I think a lot of people think we live in a world of artificial intelligence and bots and automation and you know,
data.
Robots and big data and all that craziness, goodness, and whatever your assumptions are. And you know, are salespeople going to be around in the future? As a guy that sold furniture at the age of 5 and knocked on doors selling first aid supplies and appreciates and respects the importance of relationship building, parts of the sales process will be automated. Right, the administrative pieces, like the you get out of a customer call and your call is actually transcribed and meeting note summary or sent to both parties with a little update like stuff like that is going to be automated, but the actual relationship building, handwriting those thank you card notes after you meet a customer, the blocking and tackling of asking important questions will never go away. Regardless of what you read in Forbes or Inc. or whatever sales book or sales magazine, AI is happening, artificial intelligence is happening, and automation is happening, but the act of working together and solving problems, it's not going away.
Eli, I can't thank you enough.
You're welcome.
Thanks
it's great to be here.
Show.
Thanks for all the questions.
And we're going to do some technical bits right as soon as we wrap the show. I just want to say, you guys, thanks for tuning in. And to remind you, the future is what you make it.